A culture is so closely tied to its language that if you change one, you change the other. Benjamin Lee Whorf stated, in what has become known as the Whorf hypothesis, that language is not simply a way of voicing ideas, but is the very thing which shapes those ideas. An example of this is how one perceives of time. In our modern Western culture, we view time in the sense of the past, present, and future, a fixed and measurable progression of time. Other cultures, such as the Hopi Indians of North America, do not share this perspective of time. To the Hopis, there is what is, manifested, and what is not yet, unmanifested. Interestingly, the ancient Hebrews had a very similar view of time. Like the Hopi language, the ancient Hebrew language does not use past, present, and future tenses for verbs. Instead, they use two tenses, one for a complete action, manifested, and one for incomplete action, unmanifested. An individual whose native language is Hopi views time from the Hopi perspective. But if he is required to adopt English, he learns the English perspective of time. During the late 1800s, the United States forced the Native Americans to adopt the English language. When a Hopi no longer functions within his native language, the original cultural perspectives, such as time, is lost and replaced with the modern Western perspective of time. This same shift in perspectives can be seen in the ancient Hebrew vocabulary. In Numbers 15 verse 38 we read, "Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, Make tzitzit on the corners of your garments." The Hebrew word tzitzit is a noun derived from the word tzitz. A tzitz is the blossom of a tree which will become the fruit. The tzitzit, then, is a blossom, not in appearance, but in function. The function of the tzitzit is to be a reminder to the wearer to produce fruit. Fruit being the observance of the commands as stated in verse 39. And they will see them and remember all the commandments of Yahweh. Therefore, the word tzitzit carries with it a cultural perspective which connects the blossoms of a tree with the performance of a commandment. This Hebrew language continued to function as the Jewish people's native language until their removal from the land after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD, at which time they were dispersed into many different nations. While the Jewish people continued to use the Hebrew language from then until now, it was relegated to their religious lives alone. And the language of the people around them, quite often this was Greek, was adopted as the language for everyday use. At this point, Greek becomes the influential language in their life, and their perspectives of the words and ideas are now determined by this dominant language. A tzitzit is now associated with the Greek word kraspedon, which is defined as a decorative fringe or thread, changing their perception of what a tzitzit is. It is no longer a blossom, but simply a decorative fringe. This same shift in perception occurred each time a new language was adopted, whether it was Spanish, German, or English. In 1948, Israel became a Jewish state, and with that, Hebrew once again became the everyday language of the Jewish people. While the language had been resurrected, the original cultural perspective of that language had disappeared long ago, and the Western influence on that language survived. Therefore, a tzitzit, in the mind of a modern Orthodox Jew, is still a decorative fringe and no longer functionally related to a blossom. This same change can be seen throughout the Hebrew language. For example, the Hebrew word Torah, which in the original Hebrew language meant a journey, now in the modern Hebrew means doctrine. A Cohen in the original language meant a base of the community, but in the modern Hebrew language means a religious priest. The word kadosh, which originally meant special, now in the modern language means holy.